didn't leave Hollywood, I just didn't re-sign the contract." It sounds like a simple business decision, but for Debra Winger, it was an act of survival. In the early 1980s, she wasn't just a star, she was the inevitable heir to Bette Davis, feral, unpredictable, and wielding 3 Best Actress nominations before the age of 40. She was the raw nerve of American cinema, the one who made acting look like bleeding. But then, right at the summit of her power, the screen went dark. No slow decline, no desperate string of straight-to-DVD flops, just a sudden, deafening silence. So, what really happened to the woman who fired the industry that made her a legend? Let's fade to black. To understand why Debra Winger acted with such terrifying urgency, you have to look at the moment the lights went out. She wasn't born into Hollywood royalty. She was a Jewish girl from Ohio, drifting through her teenage years until a rusty amusement park truck in 1973 changed everything. At 17 years old, she was thrown from the vehicle, suffering a cerebral hemorrhage that left her partially paralyzed and blind in one eye for months. For most people, a near-death experience breeds caution. For Winger, it bred a ravenous, almost violent hunger. Lying in that hospital bed, staring into the literal darkness, she made a pact with the universe. If she ever regained her sight, she wouldn't just look at the world, she would stare it down. She wouldn't just live, she would consume every second as if it were her last meal. When I watch her early work, I don't see a trained actress recruiting lines. I see a survivor checking for a pulse. There is a lack of polish in her movement that feels intentional. She doesn't hit her marks like a professional. She prowls the frame like an animal that knows the cage door is open. This trauma became the engine of her talent. It explains the wild child label that will follow her. Hollywood wanted starlets who were grateful and compliant, dolls that could be posed and directed. Instead, they got a woman who had seen the void and decided that politeness was a waste of time. She wasn't difficult because she was a diva. She was difficult because she refused to fake the pleasantries of a life she almost lost. Every time she stepped on set, she wasn't performing for the director. She was performing against the darkness she remembered from that hospital room. That survival instinct found its perfect vessel in 1980 with Urban Cowboy. On paper, the movie belongs to John Travolta. He was fresh off Saturday Night Fever and Grease, a cinematic god walking among mortals. Debra Winger was just the girl cast opposite him. But from the moment Sissy walked on screen, the power dynamic shifted. She wasn't playing the supportive girlfriend, she was playing a challenger. There is a specific scene that defines not just this movie, but Winger's entire approach to acting, the mechanical bull ride. It's iconic, yes, but watch it again. Ignore the crowd noise and the machismo. Focus on her face. When I watch this sequence, I don't see a sex symbol trying to titillate the audience. I see a woman in a trance of defiance. Look at her grip on the leather strap. Her knuckles are white, not from fear, but from a refusal to let go. As the machine thrashes her body around, there is a moment where she locks her eyes with Travolta across the room. It's not a flirtatious look. It's a stare of absolute kinetic dominance. Her breathing is jagged, her hair is a mess, and sweat is cutting through her makeup. She isn't worried about camera angles or lighting. She is physically proving that she can take the hit and stay mounted. It felt dangerous to watch because it was real. Reports from the set later confirmed that she did much of her own riding, bruising her body black and blue, pushing that previously paralyzed frame to its breaking point. She wasn't method acting. She was engaged in physical combat with the role. This was her internal truth during that first taste of fame. She felt like an imposter, an outsider crashing the Hollywood party, so she compensated with intensity. She had to be tougher than the boys, louder than the doubts, and more real than the script. Critics call it sexual chemistry, but that's too soft a word. It was friction. Winger didn't blend into scenes, she collided with them. She made Sissy feel less like a character written by men, and more like a real, complicated woman you'd meet in a dive bar. Someone who loves hard, but fights harder. But here is where the narrative begins to twist. That same refusal to play nice, which made her performance so electric on screen, starting to short-circuit the delicate ecosystems of Hollywood behind the scenes. The industry loves a wild child, provided she knows when to sit still. Debra Winger never learned how to sit still. By 1982, Winger was the hottest commodity in Hollywood, and an officer and a gentleman was supposed to be her coronation. And on the surface, it was. The film is pure cinematic sugar. The white naval uniform, the sweeping score, the factory floor rescue. But if you look closer, the sugar has a bitter aftertaste. This production wasn't a romance, it was a battlefield. It is now legendary that Winger and her co-star, Richard Gere, did not get along. She famously described acting with him as talking to a brick wall. But this wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a collision of philosophies. Gere was cool, detached and polished. Winger was visceral, messy and desperate for connection. When I watch their scenes together, I don't see two people falling in love. I see two predators circling each other. That tension, that genuine, palpable irritation, translated on film as fiery passion. It's one of Hollywood's greatest magic tricks. Hate looks remarkable like lust under the right lighting. Take the famous ending. You know the one. Gere walks into the paper factory, picks her up and carries her out to applause. It's the ultimate fairy tale moment. But knowing what we know now, look at Winger's face as she's being lifted. Is that the smile of a woman swept off her feet? Or is it the hysterical relief of an actress knowing she finally gets to leave this set? She fights against that ending, calling it manipulative and fake. She wanted a gritty drama about working-class struggle. The studio wanted a poster. And this brings us to the core of Winger's dilemma. She was capable of elevating material. She made us believe in that cheesy ending solely through the sheer force of her emotional commitment, but she resented having to do it. She was winning the game, but she hated the rules. She felt she was being paid to lie, to smooth over the rough edges of life that she found most beautiful. While the world fell in love with Paula Pokrivki, Debra Winger was quietly suffocating inside the sweetheart costume. But the tension on that set was nothing compared to the war she was about to declare on the industry itself. If Richard Gere was a wall, Shirley MacLaine was a mirror, one that Debra Winger didn't want to look into. In 1983's Terms of Endearment, they played mother and daughter, but the set was a battleground between old Hollywood discipline and new Hollywood chaos. Rumours flew about on-set shouting matches and physical altercations, but unlike the friction with Gere, which felt like a stalemate, this friction created a nuclear fusion of talent, and it culminates in one of the most devastating sequences in film history. Emma's death. Scene autopsy, the hospital bed.
Then it would be a relief.
Let's ignore the dialogue for a moment and look at the physiology of this performance. This is not a star death movie where the lighting is soft and the makeup is flattering. Winger plays this with a clinical, terrifying lack of vanity. Watch her breath. It isn't the dramatic gasp of a soap opera, it is the shallow, rhythmic sipping of air by a body that is shutting down. Her eyes, usually so sharp and darting, are now heavy, struggling to stay open, as if the eyelids themselves weigh 50 pounds. When she says goodbye to her sons, look at her hands. They don't reach out to grab them in a melodramatic hug. They stay relatively still, fingers twitching slightly against the sheets. It's a masterclass in physical restriction. She understands that a dying woman doesn't have the energy for big gestures, but the real brilliance happens in the silence between her and MacLaine. There is a shot where Winger turns her head on the pillow, a movement that looks exhausting, and just looks at her mother. In that 3-second stare, the power dynamic of the entire movie flips. For 2 hours, Aurora, MacLaine, has been the dominant, overbearing force. But in this moment, Emma becomes the elder. Her eyes are filled with a pitying wisdom. She is looking at her mother not with fear, but with the sad realization that she is leaving this woman all alone. Winger conveys all of this without a single word. She acts with the moisture in her eyes. She acts with the stillness of her neck. It is a performance so raw that it feels like an intrusion of privacy to watch it. The dilemma engine. This role presents the ultimate trade-off. Winger could have played Emma as a saintly victim, a role that would have guaranteed public adoration, and perhaps the Oscar that eventually went to MacLaine. Instead, she played Emma as difficult, crabby and messy right until the end. She chose the truth of the character over the likability of the actress. She didn't want you to cry because she was dying. She wanted you to cry because she was real. The industry rewarded the film with Best Picture and gave MacLaine the Best Actress statue. Winger sat in the audience, clapping the eternal bridesmaid. But in hindsight, that loss was a signal. Hollywood was happy to celebrate the result, but they were becoming increasingly tired of the process Winger required to get there. She had proven she was the best actress of her generation, but she was also proving to be a cog that refused to fit into the machine. And this is where things start to turn grim, because when you fight the system for too long, eventually the system stops fighting back and just starts closing doors. By the mid-80s, the Whisper network in Hollywood had turned into a scream. Debra Winger is impossible. Directors claimed she was unmanageable. Co-stars claimed she was abrasive. But let's apply the dilemma engine to this reputation. In that era, when Sean Penn punched photographers or Marlon Brando refused to memorize lines, they were hailed as uncompromising geniuses. Their bad behavior was seen as proof of their commitment. But when Winger argued about a line of dialogue or refused to do a promotional tour because she felt it was fake, she wasn't called a genius. She was called difficult. She was a woman trying to play a man's game of power without the protection of the boys' club. And nothing illustrates this trade-off between money and integrity better than the phantom movie of her career, A League of Their Own. Most people don't know this, that Debra Winger was the original Dottie Hinson. She had signed the contract. She had spent months training with the Chicago Cubs, transforming her body into a machine capable of hitting a fastball. She was ready to anchor a gritty, realistic film about women in sports. Then, the studio cast Madonna. For the studio, it was a marketing coup. For Winger, it was a betrayal of the film's reality. She viewed it as stunt casting, turning a story about female athletes into a pop culture circus. So, in a move that baffled her agents and disenchanted her accountants, she walked away. She left a guaranteed blockbuster and a massive paycheck on the table because the project no longer felt true. Gina Davis took the role, and the movie became a classic. When I look at that decision, I have to ask, was it arrogance? Maybe. But there is something hauntingly admirable about it. How many of us stay in jobs we hate or work on projects we don't believe in just because we are afraid to lose our spot in line? Winger wasn't afraid. She would rather be absent than be fake. But as the 90s rolled in, that refusal to compromise was about to cost her more than just a role. It was about to cost her an entire decade. If the 80s were about Debra Winger screaming to be heard, 1993 was about the power of a whisper. In Shadowlands, starring opposite Anthony Hopkins, she played Joy Gresham. It was a role that required the exact opposite of the feral energy she displayed in Urban Cowboy. She had to be intellectual, brittle, and deeply contained. It is, in my opinion, her finest work. She proved that she didn't need to break furniture or fight directors to command a screen. She just needed to be present. There is a scene where she realizes her cancer is terminal. She doesn't cry, she doesn't scream. She looks simply at Hopkins with a gaze that is terrifyingly clear-eyed. It's the look of a woman who has already packed her bags for the next world. The Academy noticed, granting her a third Best Actress nomination. She was 38 years old, sitting at the absolute pinnacle of her craft, with the world at her feet. And that is exactly when she decided to jump off. This is the part of the story that haunts us. We are conditioned to believe that success is a one-way street. You climb until you can't climb anymore. But Winger looked around at the summit, at the awards, the agents, the scripts, and she didn't see a view worth admiring. She saw a cage. She later said, "I wanted to live my life, not just play it." It's a sentiment that resonates with anyone who has ever felt trapped by their own success. How many of us continue on a path simply because we are good at it, not because it feeds our soul? Winger didn't want to become a caricature of herself, aging into roles she didn't respect, fighting for screen time in an industry that discards women over 40. So, she did the unthinkable. She didn't stage a press conference. She didn't announce a hiatus. She simply stopped answering the phone. For 6 years, the screen was black. In Hollywood time, 6 years is an eternity. It is long enough to be forgotten, replaced, and buried. The industry assumed the worst. Was it a breakdown? Was it drugs? Was it the difficult reputation finally catching up to her? The truth was far more radical. She was just living. While the tabloids speculated, Debra Winger was in her garden. She was raising her son. She was nursing her dying mother. She was doing the mundane, unglamorous work of being a human being, the very thing fame tries to strip away from you. She traded the adrenaline of the set for the slow, quiet rhythm of the seasons. There is a profound humility in this disappearance. Most actors are disenchanted with the silence. They fill every gap in their schedule with projects, afraid that if they stop moving, they will cease to exist. Winger embraces the silence. She understood a fundamental truth that most stars miss. You cannot portray life if you don't participate in it. During this hiatus, she didn't just sit idle. She went to Harvard University. But true to her nature, she didn't go to teach a masterclass in acting or to bask in her own celebrity. She became a teaching fellow for a course called The Literature of Social Reflection. She wanted to engage with minds, not egos. She wanted to discuss ideas, not box office returns. It paints a picture of a woman who was starving for substance. After years of pretending to be other people, she needed to remember who she was. When I see photos of her from this period, there is a distinct lack of posture. She isn't sucking in her stomach. She isn't finding her light. She looks tired, happy, and remarkable ordinary. And I mean that as the highest compliment. It takes immense courage to be ordinary when the world demands you be extraordinary. Most stars fade away because the phone stops ringing. Debra Winger faded away because she unplugged the phone. She proved that the only way to win the game of Hollywood was to stop playing it. But just when the industry thought they had written the final obituary for her career, she decided she had one more thing to say. When Debra Winger finally drifted back onto the screen in the 2000s and 2010s, she committed the ultimate Hollywood sin. She looked her age. In an industry that treats wrinkles like a contagious disease, Winger returned with a face that was a map of her time away. She refused the facelift, the fillers, and the soft lighting. When you watch her in films like Rachel Getting Married or The Lovers, you are seeing something almost extinct in modern cinema, the natural texture of a woman's life. There is a specific quietness to her modern performances. In The Lovers, 2017, playing a woman entangled in a dull marriage and a messy affair, the feral energy of her youth has metabolized into a heavy, grounded presence. She moves slower. She speaks with a gravelly resonance. But the danger is still there. It's just different. It's no longer the danger of an explosion, it's the danger of the truth. She acts with a posture of total indifference to the camera's approval. Most actors beg you to love them. Winger dares you to watch her. This phase of her career forces us to confront our own terrifying relationship with aging. We live in a culture that tells us our value diminishes as our skin loses its elasticity. We are taught to hide the evidence of our survival. Winger's return is a silent protest against that erasure. She wears her history like armor. By refusing to fix her face, she is forcing the audience to adjust their eyes to reality. She doesn't treat acting as her identity anymore. She treats it like a job she visits occasionally. She still lives on her farm. She still prioritizes her activism and her family, and in doing so, she has achieved a quiet win that is far more impressive than a Lifetime Achievement Award. She proves that you don't have to die a legend or live long enough to become a joke. You can just become a person. But the most striking thing isn't that she came back. It's how she came back. She didn't return to reclaim her throne or to chase the ghost of her past glory. She returned on her own terms, with her own face, and with zero apologies for the time she spent away. This isn't a comeback. A comeback implies you were defeated. This is an evolution. So, how should we remember Debra Winger? If you look at the box office, she is a what could have been. If you look at the awards, she is a perennial runner-up. But if you look at the art form itself, she is something far more vital. The patron saint of the difficult woman. For decades, the industry used her name as a cautionary tale. Don't be a Debra Winger, agents would whisper to young actresses. Don't fight the director. Don't rewrite the lines. Don't be difficult. But looking back from the clarity of the present, we can finally decode what that label really meant. Difficult was just the industry's word for a woman who refused to be a product. Her legacy isn't measured in the roles she took, but in the integrity she kept. Every time she fought with the director, she wasn't fighting for screen time. She fought for the scene's soul. Every time she walked away from a paycheck, she was buying back a piece of her own humanity. She left scorch marks on the floor of Hollywood, not because she wanted to burn it down, but because she was the only one running hot enough to tell the truth. In a world of filtered Instagram posts and PR-managed celebrities, Winger's career stands as a monument to the unpolished reality. She reminds us that likability is a trap. We spend so much of our lives trying to be easy to work with, easy to love, easy to manage. We sand down our edges until we are smooth enough to fit into whatever box the world has built for us. Debra Winger kept her edges. She stayed sharp. And yes, she cuts people. But she also cuts through the noise. She forces us to ask ourselves the most uncomfortable question of all. What is the price of your own authenticity? Are you willing to be labelled trouble if it means staying true to your vision? Are you brave enough to walk out of the room when the deal requires you to sell your soul? Most of us stay in the room. Winger walked out, and she didn't just survive the exit. She built a life on the other side that was richer than the fiction she left behind. She proves that you can lose the Oscar and still win the life. We shouldn't remember her as the star who disappeared. We should remember her as the signal flare that never went out. She is the reminder that your talent belongs to you, not the machine that sells it. She is the haunting possibility that maybe, just maybe, the movies aren't the most important thing in the world. Being able to look at yourself in the mirror is. So, when you watch those early 80s films, don't just look for the acting. Look for the fight. Look for the woman who stared into the lens and dared us to blink first. This isn't a rewind. It's a record, so the era doesn't vanish without a trace. And for the woman who finally finds her own rhythm in the silence, let's fade to black.